The quadratic formula is a way to solve quadratics without factoring and without graphing. This is a different way to solve quadratics. Yesterday we started with this smiley face and we made a smile that touched 2 points on the x-axis. We made a smile that touched 1 point on the x-axis. And we made a smile that didn't touch anywhere on the x-axis. And you will see why we did that in just a few problems. So our quadratic formula, we're using it when we have a quadratic. Anything with a squared value. Our quadratic formula is right there. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. And now we're going to use that formula. What you need to start off with is making sure that this is in standard form. Standard form is so important because otherwise you're not going to get the correct A, B, and C values. So make sure you have standard form. So for letter A, I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides, and I end up with 2x squared minus x minus 4 equals 0. The next step is to identify your A, B, and C. A, B, and C are just coefficients. A is your coefficient on x squared, so in this case, A is 2. B is your coefficient on x, that is -1. And C is your constant value, which is -4. Now you just want to plug these in. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now we're going to simplify. No, you need to be able to write this part of it out. The simplification part you can do on a calculator, but this part you need to have written out. Question, Alex? Yeah, we're going to do 1 plus or minus, then we're going to simplify what's under the square root. Under the square root. -1 squared is a +1. So we have 1, -4 times 2 times -4 is going to be a +32. And this is over 4. Yeah.
Is it 4 times 2 then times -4?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do 4 times 2 first.
No, you could do -4 times -4 and then times 2.
Could you do 2 times -4 and then times it?
Yes. Yes. All three of those numbers are just being multiplied, so you can multiply them in any order. Just make sure you're taking the sign in front of it. So whenever you simplify, your first step of simplifying, you should simplify what's under the radical, and you should simplify your denominator. I'm going to take my simplification a step further. I have 1 plus or minus the square root of 33 divided by 4. Do we know what the square root of 33 is? No, it's not a perfect square. Can I simplify the square root of 33? Nope, because there's not a perfect square in it. So my answer here is going to stay just like it is. 1 plus or minus, that gives us our two answers, the plus and minus part of it. 1 plus or minus square root of 33 over 4. So if we were to put this on a graph, it would look like a smiley face that's crossing the x-axis twice because there are two answers here. For problem B, we're already in standard form. So what I want you to do is I want you to identify your A, B, and C values. Who can do that for me? Jess. And then you're just going to fill them into your formula. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Now simplify. Six squared is 36. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times 9 is negative 36. All over 2. So then when I simplify further, I get negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 0 over 2. Would there be any reason for me to put plus or minus 0? Nope. It's just 0. So we can add 0, we can subtract 0 all we want, but none of the values change. So this is just negative 6 divided by 2. So your solution to this quadratic is negative 3. Sadie? Yes, it is. Very good. There's only one answer here, so it would be like the smiley face that only crosses the x-axis once. Cameron?
Why didn't we add or subtract 1 in the first problem, but in this one we added or subtracted 6?
Because it was minus 6 plus 0, so we knew the value was negative 6.
Wasn't it plus or minus?
Well, what's negative 6 plus 0?
Negative 6.
What's negative 6 minus 0?
Negative 6.
Yeah, that's why. That's why it's just one value. Morgan? Yes, if you have a perfect square trinomial. Very good. Morgan noticed that if you look back to this beginning, we have a perfect square trinomial. Those perfect square trinomials we can factor. And if we factored that and we solved it, we would only get one answer of negative 3. And here we are with the quadratic formula, getting the same answer, negative 3. Let's do some more quadratic formula. What do I need to do first in this question? Cody? Good. Standard form is very important. Someone give me my A, B, and C values. Sadie.
A equals 1, B equals 4.
Good. Now we just need to fill it in. X equals the opposite of B plus or minus the square root B squared minus 4AC all divided by 2A. If you guys didn't notice, there's a reason I'm not a music teacher. That's the best my singing gets. So we have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 16 over 2.
Is it always going to be like that?
No,
Why not?
because sometimes it doesn't work out that way. You mean the 16 minus 16?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not always going to be like that. Our first one wasn't like that. So we get x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 0 over 2. Again, that's just like saying negative 4 plus or minus 0 over 2. Well, there's really no reason to write that plus or minus 0 because that does not change your value. Negative 4 divided by 2 gives you your answer of x is negative 2. So our first problem, we had 2 answers. The second and third problem, we had 1 answer. Let's see what the fourth problem brings for us. I want you guys to work on the fourth problem on your own. So work through this, and then we can check your answers with mine.
I just wasn't thinking about it because I was thinking about no.
Oh, I thought she was writing the answer.
So
I was like,
I was there.
-2 plus or minus 3.
So we have -4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 12 over 2. So most of you had no trouble getting to this point. -4 plus or minus root 28 over 2. Now to this point, that's where we stop. So if you got there, that's good. If you recognize there's a perfect square in 28, that's even better. Because you want to take the square root of 28 and simplify it. The perfect square in 28 is 4. So this breaks into the square root of 4 and the square root of 7. The square root of 4 is 2 root 7. So now I'm going to go back here and I have -4 plus or minus, not the square root of 28, I simplified that. 2 root 7 over 2. So if you got here, that's good. But if you took one more step, that's great, because then you have the right answer. Because we can look at all of our numbers, -4, 2, and 2. We're not using the radical, because the radical is almost like it's an unlike term. So we're not going to simplify the radical. But if we can simplify both the -4 and the 2 with our denominator, we should do so. So I'm going to divide each of these numbers by 2 to reduce it. And I get -2 plus or minus the square root of 7. Good.
This actually is really easy.
So make sure you are checking your radicals to see if they can be simplified. Our next problem, we're going to make the quadratic formula help us in a word problem. Our school's jazz band is selling CDs, and the total profit depends on how much each CD costs, how much you're charging for each CD. There's an equation, P equals -x squared plus 48x minus 300. P is the profit, X is the price that the CDs are being sold for. And it says, what's the least amount of money in dollars that you can charge for a CD if you want the profit to be 200? So we want our profit to be 200, and we know that our equation is P equals -x squared plus 48x minus 300. What can I fill in here? What do I know about this equation? Jess?
You want the profit to be 200?
Exactly. So replace P with 200. I have a quadratic, I need to solve it. We have different methods of solving. We have factoring, we have graphing, and today we have our new friend, the quadratic formula. But in order to use the quadratic formula, this has to be in standard form. So what can I do to make this equation in standard form? Josh?
Divide both sides by -1.
That could get me there, but I don't have to do that. I don't have to. You, Chen?
Subtract 200.
Good. Set this equal to 0. That's the most crucial part. So now I have A is -1, B is 48, and C is -500. X equals the opposite of B plus or minus the square root B squared minus 4AC, all divided by 2A. Yes, you can certainly use your calculator for this. You don't have to do this in your head. So when you're putting the number under the radical, when you're putting it in the calculator, just enter it as you see it. 48 squared minus 4 times -1 times -500. You can't do plus and minus in a calculator. You just have to write it as -48 plus or minus root 304 divided by -2. We'll get there. But you have to manually enter plus this minus this in two different entries. For right now, all you want to simplify is that 48 squared minus 4 times -1 times -500. And now we've got two different answers. We either have -48 plus the square root of 304 divided by -2, or -48 minus the square root of 304 divided by -2. Now, before you put this in your calculator, this is very, very, very important. So everybody, please pay attention. Your calculator needs to know what you want it to do. You need to tell your calculator, I want you to do this top portion and then divide by -2. So you can either put parentheses around it, parentheses, -48 plus the square root of 304, and then 2 parentheses at the end. Then divide by -2. Or, in your calculator, you can take -48 plus the square root of 304, hit enter, then divide by -2. Okay? Jess?
Can't you divide the -48 by -2?
No, because you can't divide it here. There's not a coefficient in front of that you can divide. And you have to be able to divide both of those top terms.
Okay.
Okay? So throw these into your calculator and make sure you are getting 15.28 and 32.72. Mm-hmm.
Wow. No, you should still get the same thing.
So I just punch that in.
So you got 19?
Yeah.
And then I heard stop that.
Yeah, it's just a negative sign. Oh wait, no, that one would be negative because look, this is -2. Yeah. Yeah, and then for the next one, you're going to subtract it. Yeah, back to work. You have to see how this parentheses only, the parentheses are you have to add another sign.
How do you get two answers?
One, you use the plus sign.
And one you use the negative.
Yes. Okay, is anyone having a problem getting these answers in your calculator? Please raise your hand. Let me help you. Okay, which one of these is our answer? Nope. It's not both of them. That's right. It's the least one. The problem says, what is the least amount? So our least amount is $15.28.
So once you find that answer, you just put it into the calculator and then find the two answers.
So they're asking us in the got it question, how would that change? What would the least amount be if you wanted to make a profit of $100? Now, there's not going to be a whole lot of difference here. What's going to change about that problem? P, exactly. Now our profit needs to be 100. So we have 100 equals negative x squared plus 48x minus 300.
Wouldn't it be 400? Oh.
You get x is about 10.73 and x is about 37.27.
I got like 29. I typed in, oh wait, is this a negative? Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. It's negative 48.
See, I put that in for this one. But negative 3 and 12.
Okay, guys, which one is the answer?
The lowest one.
The least amount. Yes, it's asking for your least amount, $10.73. Show me how you entered it. That should be negative 4, not minus. Oh, impressive. Okay, now, reasoning question. Would a negative profit make sense here? Could they have a negative profit?
Yes.
Exactly. If they lost money, we probably wouldn't call it a profit then. But if they lost money, our p-value would be negative. In what kind of situation would they be losing money? Explain this to me. What'd you say? No one bought their CDs. They paid to have all of these CDs made, and they had all of this cost, but then they didn't sell enough to cover that cost. So if they spent more than they made, they would end up with a negative profit. Okay, last thing about this lesson, we're going to do it very quickly because it's pretty simple. We started and we got 2 answers. Then we got 1 answer. Then we got 1 answer. Then we got 2 answers. Sometimes we'll get no answers. But there's a way to find out, even before you go through the whole quadratic formula, there is a way to find out how many answers you will get. The number underneath the square root has a special name. We call it the discriminant. B squared minus 4AC. That's called the discriminant. This chart tells you if your discriminant is greater than 0. So if your discriminant is positive, then you have 2 solutions. It crosses the x twice. If your discriminant is 0, like those 2 examples where we had the square root of 0, then you have 1 solution. Crosses the x-axis once. And if your discriminant is negative, we have a whole new situation where we have no real solutions. So that means we don't cross the x-axis at all.
How would you have a negative?
I'll show you. All you have to do to find the value of your discriminant is to identify A, B, and C. A would be negative 2. B would be negative 3. C would be 5. And then you're just going to do the B squared minus 4AC part of the quadratic formula. B squared minus 4AC. Negative 3 squared is 9, minus 4 minus 2 times 5 is plus 40. your discriminant is a positive number. It's positive 49. When you have a positive number, that tells you that you have 2 real answers. So we would have 2 solutions. And that's just an abbreviation for solution. Very happy. Let's try another. I know. A is 2, B is -3, and C is 7. The discriminant is -3 squared, B squared minus 4 times A times C. Nine minus 56 that number would be a -47. If you have a negative number, you have how many solutions? None. Okay, guys, your homework